There are places in Italy where the government looked at an entire community, thousands of people, centuries of history, and decided they didn't matter enough to save, packed them into buses, moved them to concrete blocks in a valley below, left everything they owned behind locked doors. That happened more than once, and nobody talks about it. Italy has 7,000 years of civilization. Millions of tourists pour into Rome, Florence, Venice, and they think they've seen it. They haven't. They've seen the surface. Beneath the postcard version of Italy is another country, a hidden one, crumbling, silent, forgotten. We're talking about ghost towns, abandoned cities, medieval villages, entire communities where thousands of people once lived, loved, and died, and then simply left. Some destroyed by earthquakes, some swallowed by floods, some pushed off hillsides by landslides that took decades to win, and some emptied by a government decision made in a distant office by people who never visited. These aren't tourist traps. Most don't have an entry fee. Some don't even have a road sign anymore. 10 ghost towns hidden across Italy, each one with a story most people have never heard. Let's go. Entry number 10. Roscigno, Vecchia, Campania. Roscigno Vecchia sits in the mountains of the Salento. It's not a ruin in the dramatic sense. No collapsed towers, no bombed-out facades. It's worse than that. It looks completely intact. Windows, doorways, a stone church, a piazza, and nobody inside. The town was abandoned not once but 4 times over a century. Starting in the late 1800s, the hillside began moving. Slowly, inexorably, the clay beneath Roscigno was sliding. Geological creep that no amount of engineering could stop. Houses cracked, roads buckled, walls tilted at angles that told you the earth itself was shifting. The government ordered evacuations. People left, then stubbornly came back, because this was home, where their grandparents were buried, where the olive trees had been planted generations ago. You don't just walk away from that. But eventually they had to. The last official resident was a man named Giuseppe Spagnuolo. He refused to leave for decades, lived alone in the ghost town, kept the streets swept, tended to the buildings as if the neighbors might return any day. He died in 2005. The town has been empty since. What's remarkable about Roscigno Vecchia today is how preserved it is. There's a small museum, one room showing what daily life looked like before the earth pushed everyone out. A loom, a cradle, terracotta pots. The detritus of an ordinary life interrupted and never resumed. The landslide is still happening. Millimeter by millimeter, the town is still moving. Entry number 9, Bussana Vecchia, Liguria. In 1887, an earthquake measuring 6.7 struck the Ligurian coast. It hit on February 23rd, the feast day of St. Romolo. The timing was brutal. Most of the population was packed into the church for morning mass. The roof collapsed. The bell tower fell through the nave. Hundreds died in minutes. Survivors fled downhill where a new town, Bussana Nuova, was built for them. Bussana Vecchia was left exactly as the earthquake left it. For 70 years, nothing changed. The ruins sat on their hilltop, slowly consumed by vegetation. Ficus trees pushed through stone walls. Vines climbed the collapsed campanile. Then in the 1960s, artists moved in. Painters, sculptors, and craftspeople saw not a catastrophe but a canvas. They repaired enough to make structures habitable, set up studios in the broken buildings, and turned the ghost town into an artist colony. The Italian government tried to evict them for decades. The artists had no legal title to the land. They stayed anyway. Today, around 100 artists still live and work there. Technically squatters, their status never fully resolved. The earthquake church is open to the sky, its collapsed roof replaced by jasmine. You can walk through the ruins on any given afternoon and hear a sculptor working in the next room. Entry number 8, Craco, Basilicata. If you've ever watched a film set in some ancient apocalyptic landscape and wondered where on earth they filmed it, There's a good chance the answer is Craco. Craco has been in more films than most working actors. Quantum of Solace, The Passion of the Christ. Christ stopped at Eboli. It sits on a 400-meter spur of rock in Basilicata, rising from eroded clay badlands like a fortress that lost its war, inhabited since the 10th century. A bishop's seat, a market town, a place of regional significance. For 900 years, people made it work on that impossible outcrop of rock. Then 1963, a landslide took out a significant portion of the lower town. Then flooding, another landslide in 1972, an earthquake in 1980. The last residents evacuated that year. What they left behind is extraordinary. The medieval street pattern survives. The Norman Tower still stands, but nothing inside the buildings remains. Every room is open to the weather. Every floor collapsed. Every staircase leads to a landing above nothing. Access to the interior requires a guide because structural stability is unpredictable. But the approach road gives you a view that stops most people cold. That tower, rising above the eroded landscape, crumbling but not fallen. Craco doesn't look like a place humans abandoned. It looks like a place humans were never supposed to be, and the earth is slowly, methodically proving correct. Entry number 7. Pentedattilo, Calabria. The name means 5 fingers in Greek. When you see it, you understand immediately why. Pentedattilo sits at the base of a rock formation that looks exactly like a hand. 5 stone fingers rising from the Calabrian hills, the village clinging to the base of the palm. Almost nobody outside Italy knows it exists. The settlement goes back to ancient Greek colonization. The toe of the Italian boot was heavily settled by Greeks, and the name is pure Greek. Pente, 5, dactylos, finger. For centuries the village thrived in this dramatic landscape. Then the earthquake of 1783, one of the deadliest seismic events in Italian history, killing tens of thousands across Calabria, nearly destroyed it. The survivors rebuilt, they continued. But the 20th century brought a slower disaster. The land was difficult, work was scarce. Southern Italy's great exodus, millions migrating north into the Americas, emptied villages across Calabria. Pentedattilo lost its people not to any single event, but to the slow, grinding economics of an agricultural economy that couldn't compete. By the 1960s, the last families had left. There's also documented history darker than any legend needs to be. In 1686, a feudal massacre took place here on Easter Sunday. The Alberti family slaughtered by a rival clan. Not folklore, not rumor. Court records. The perpetrators were eventually tried. The killings were real. Walk those ruins today and you're walking a crime scene 340 years old. The 5 fingers of stone above you are exactly as indifferent as they were that Easter morning. The geology, the history, the blood, Pentedattilo earns its place on this list. Entry number 6, Consonno, Lombardy. Everything on this list has followed the same basic pattern. Ancient village, geological disaster, evacuation, ruins. Entry 6 breaks every single one of those rules, and it's probably the strangest story in Italy's entire catalog of abandoned places. Stay with me on this one. Consonno in Lombardy near the city of Vecchio was a perfectly normal medieval hamlet until 1962. At that point, a wealthy Milanese entrepreneur named Count Mario Bagno purchased it, then demolished most of the original village, then built in its place a fantasy amusement resort, a pagoda, a minaret, a Wild West saloon, a Moorish tower, neon lights, a discotheque, a hotel, carnival rides. He called it the City of Toys. In the 1960s, Consonno briefly became a popular day trip from Milan. Thousands came to experience this bizarre collision of architectural styles in the Lombardy hills. Then in 1976, a landslide blocked the only road into the village. And that was that. Without road access, the resort closed. The Count's dream collapsed faster than his pagoda. The woodland reclaimed everything he'd built over the following decades. Today the pagoda is half collapsed and draped in vegetation. The Moorish tower stands in the middle of undergrowth. The Wild West facades are still legible under the moss. The discotheque is a rusted shell open to the sky. The original medieval church survived. The Count didn't demolish that, and it stands incongruously intact in the middle of this collapsed fantasy landscape. Nobody planned Consonno to be an art installation, but that's what the forest made it. Entry number 5, Fabbriche di Careggine, Tuscany. This one has a twist no other ghost town on this list can claim. Fabbriche di Careggine is at the bottom of a lake. In 1953, construction of the Vagli Reservoir in the Garfagnana required flooding a valley. In that valley was a medieval village. Residents were relocated, the church dismantled, the cemetery moved, then the water was let in. For most years, Fabbriche di Careggine is invisible, 30 meters underwater in the Lago di Vagli. But every 10 to 15 years, the reservoir is drained for maintenance. And when it is, the village emerges. This has happened 4 times since 1953, in 1958, 1974, 1983, and 1994. Each time the water drops, the stone walls appear first, then the street pattern, the mill foundations, the bridge over the now dry river. The village reassembles itself from the water, perfectly legible, perfectly preserved by the cold and dark. Thousands travel to see it each time it surfaces. They call it the Italian Atlantis. Think about what that means. There are people alive today who were born in Fabbriche di Careggine, who played on those streets, whose grandparents are buried in that relocated cemetery, and they can come back once a decade and walk through their drowned hometown. The buildings are there, the walls are intact, but everything that made it a place, the noise, the neighbors, the ordinary daily life, is gone, replaced by 30 meters of cold mountain water. Entry number 4, Civita di Bagnoregio, Lazio. Civita di Bagnoregio isn't fully abandoned. Fewer than 15 permanent residents still live there year-round, but it belongs on this list because it is disappearing, right now, in real time. It sits on a plateau of volcanic tufa rock, above the Tiber Valley in Lazio, inhabited for 2,500 years. Etruscans were here before Rome was a city. It has a medieval church, stone streets, a piazza, views that stretch across a landscape of eroded clay gullies, the Calanchi, that look like another planet. Tufa is the problem. Soft volcanic rock. It erodes. Rain cuts into it. Wind cuts into it. The plateau has been shrinking for centuries and the rate is accelerating. Geologists at the University of Rome have measured the cliff face losing between 1 and 2 meters per year in the most vulnerable sections. At that rate, the outer edges of the town have decades, not centuries. Italy has named it a site of national interest. UNESCO has looked at it. Tourists now come in significant numbers, a paradox, because the foot traffic itself accelerates the erosion. The 15 or so residents know all of this. They stay anyway. There's something about that choice, refusing the rational conclusion, keeping the fires burning in a place the earth is eating, that is either deeply human or deeply Italian, probably both. Entry number 3, Gairo, Vecchio, Sardinia. Sardinia operates on its own logic. Different language, different culture, different relationship to history. Gairo Vecchio is in the Ogliastra region, in the mountains of central eastern Sardinia, a village of the Barbagia interior, where the old ways persisted longest and the outside world had least purchase. In 1951, catastrophic flooding struck. The Flumendosa River burst its banks repeatedly. The Italian government determined the village was too dangerous to rebuild and ordered permanent evacuation. Gairo's residents didn't go quietly. The evacuation became a political battle lasting years. People clung to their homes with the particular stubbornness of a culture that had spent centuries resisting outside interference. Sardinia had been conquered by Carthaginians, Romans, Vandals, Byzantines, Arabs, Pisans, and Aragonese, and its interior communities had learned that the safest bet was to outlast whoever was currently telling them what to do. Here's how deep that resistance ran. Some families refused to evacuate for over a decade after the official order. A decade. The Italian government saying, "You cannot live here." The families of Gairo saying, "Watch us." But the flooding was real. Eventually, the last residents left for a new town, Gairo Taquisara, built nearby. What survives is one of the most complete ghost town landscapes in Italy. Stone houses still standing, the church intact, the village layout fully legible. There's an annual festival where descendants return and walk the streets their grandparents walked, maintaining communal memory of a place that officially no longer exists. That ritual is one of the most quietly powerful things that happens in any of these ghost towns. Entry number 2, Apice Vecchia, Campania. On November 23, 1980, an earthquake struck. Magnitude 6.9. Epicenter in the Irpinia region of Campania. Death toll across the region, almost 3,000 people. Apice Vecchia was a thriving medieval town in the province of Benevento. A cathedral, a castle, history going back to Roman times. The earthquake damaged it heavily but didn't destroy it. Many buildings survived. The Italian government declared the entire town uninhabitable anyway and ordered evacuation. A new Apice was built nearby on safer ground. Then they didn't demolish the old town. They just left it. Because the evacuation was sudden and government ordered, people took almost nothing with them. They assumed it was temporary. They'd be allowed back to collect their belongings and move properly. They were never allowed back. Inside those buildings today, furniture, dishes and kitchen cabinets, clothes and wardrobes, religious icons on walls. One shop still has merchandise on its shelves, canned goods behind glass now. A pharmacy still has medicine bottles arranged on its counter. A school still has children's drawings pinned to the walls. 40-year-old crayon drawings, still there. Apice Vecchia is not a ruin. It's a pause, a moment frozen in November 1980, still waiting for the residents to come back and collect what they left behind. Nobody is coming back. Entry number 1, Monterano, Lazio. For the top spot, a place with layers upon layers. Roman, medieval, Baroque, finally abandoned, telling the complete story of what Italy has been across 2,000 years. Monterano is in the Tolfa Hills, north of Rome, inside a nature reserve. Getting there requires a walk through woodland that gives no hint of what you're about to find. Then you come over a ridge and see it. The ruins of a Baroque church designed by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Yes, that Bernini, the architect of St. Peter's Square, sitting at the edge of a cliff. Its facade still partially intact, arches open to the sky. Beside it, the remains of a castle and a medieval town spread across the plateau. Monterano was inhabited from Etruscan times. The Romans built here. The Orsini family built a fortress in the 12th century. By the 17th century, it was prosperous enough that the aristocratic Altieri family commissioned Bernini to redesign the church. He built it. He also designed an aqueduct and a lion fountain that still stands in the ruins. Then came the malaria. Italy's volcanic lakes had always been malarial country. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the disease worsened. French troops during the Napoleonic period stripped the town of resources and burned what they couldn't carry. By 1799, Monterano was empty. What separates it from every other entry on this list is the quality of what remains. Not a village, a town, wealthy enough to have Baroque architecture by one of the greatest designers in Italian history. That church sits in the woods, abandoned for 225 years, open to anyone who walks 2 kilometers from the car park. No ticket, no fence, no guided tour required. You can put your hand on stone Bernini designed and feel 17th century craftsmanship, standing in a ruin that a malaria epidemic emptied more than 2 centuries ago. That is what Italy hides. Not just medieval ruins, not just earthquake damage, a Baroque masterpiece left in the woods waiting to be found. Closer. 10 ghost towns, 10 different stories. Earthquakes, landslides, floods, malaria, political decisions, economic migration, a mad count with a pagoda and a Wild West saloon. Here's what connects them all. Every one of these places was once full. Market days, Sunday mass, a midwife who knew every family on every street, children born in these buildings, old people dying in them, the arguments, the love affairs, the debts, the celebrations, the texture of a human community. And then it stopped. Some of it was sudden and seismic. Some was a slow trickle of departures until one day nobody was left. Some was a government decision made by people who never visited, but the places remain, crumbling, being reclaimed by vines and ficus roots and volcanic erosion, but still there, still legible. Italy puts 7,000 years of civilization in front of you and says, look what humans can build. These ghost towns are the other half of that sentence. Look what humans walk away from. Get off the tourist trail. Hire a local guide where access requires it. Learn the name of a village that isn't in the guidebook. Because somewhere in the mountains of Calabria, or the volcanic hills of Lazio, or at the bottom of a Tuscan lake, there's an ordinary story about ordinary people. And it's one of the most extraordinary things you'll ever find. I'll see you in the next one.